So I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about myself. First of all, the most important part of me is that I'm a mother. I have 2 kids, and you just met my daughter. She's actually quite good on the computer, and also my son. And both have had some learning challenges in their life, and that's what's been behind my passion and interest to pursue further learning. And I'll be talking about that briefly. I'm an educator. Right now, I'm a literacy teacher, but I've been a summer school principal and I've been a classroom teacher. I've taught basically every single grade from kindergarten to grade 7. My teaching career started with teaching kindergarten and really enjoyed it. And now I've actually been working more with the grade 6s and 7s. I am a lifelong learner and I'm always learning. I learn from families and parents and kids, especially. They teach me ways that I can change my practice. And the elephant at the bottom is, I put that there because I was born in India. So when I came to Canada, English was a second language for me. Okay, so I'm just looking to see where my notes are, but I would like to acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the Coast Salish, Tusalip, and Musqueam territories. So this is the plan. I'm going to give you some strategies for reading with your child, forms of questions to ask them, setting up a summer routine, and a big part is executive functioning skills. That's really, really important as far as setting routines and setting up the time factor. All of these things are going to be related to reading. This is one of my favorite quotes. It is better to know how to learn than to know. We can know a lot of things, but going through the process and learning. So if there's any skill that I speak about that maybe your child doesn't have, I want you to know that all those skills can be taught and kids learn that, as we know, in their own time. And then I really took this image. It's very dear to me because everything happens with small steps, and that includes working on routine to get your kids reading during the summer. Start off small, and I'm going to show you how you can do that. So what do we know about reading? Well, this is Richard Arlington, a very famous doctor of reading. And these are the things that has been proven again and again and again about reading. The most important thing is that it's really important that kids choose something that they want to read, that they read it accurately, and also to understand what they're reading. The other important part is to make sure that your child is reading a book that is at their reading level. You don't want to have a book where they're making more than 5 or 6 mistakes. That's way too many. You want about 90% or 95% accuracy in their reading materials. So it's been proven that if they're reading at their level, that's how they're going to increase their reading understanding and reading accuracy. If you push your child and have them reading something that is too difficult for them, they're not going to want to read, and also they won't get the content of what they're reading as much. So there's 3 ways to enjoy a book. There is shared reading. So that would mean that you would read a page and your child would read a page. So you're reading it together, or you're filling in words that they're missing. That's called shared reading. Read to books are books that you would be reading to them. And the research on that is that, so if your child is in grade 2, then you want to go about 3 or 4 years above that grade level when you're reading books to them. So if they're in grade 2, you want to read a book that is like a grade 5. So I'm going to talk and share some of the books that you can read to them. Independent reading is very, very important. Having kids practice their reading. So during the summer, please don't let your child slip in their daily reading. It's really, really important. Even if it's for 5 minutes, it doesn't have to be a long period of time, and letting them choose what they're going to read. Rhymes and chants. The master is Dr. Seuss. His rhyming is so fantastic. And rhyming is where reading starts, because you learn about how to break words into syllables and to sounds. So reading is just not reading a novel. Reading is also reading poems, chants, and other genres. So here we've got 5 busy honeybees. I just want to share this with you because this is something that you can read with your child. Now, obviously, if your child is older, you're not going to choose this particular one, but there are other age-appropriate ones, which I'm going to share in just a minute. But, you know, where you could do this as a shared reading, or you could do it just reading it together. There's lots and lots of materials available on a website called Teachers Pay Teachers. And I'm going to be sending out a handout on all the different sites of chants and rhymes that I recommend that you can look up in your own time. So when we look at reading, if you look at this word, it is very difficult to pronounce. So I'm just going to give you like 2 minutes to go through and try to pronounce it. And I want you to think about what strategies you use to figure out how to actually say these words. So I'm just going to pause for a minute. So the first one, accede, okay, you automatically, your eyes would be going to the last part of the word, which is seed, and it breaks up into syllables. So this is how rhymes work. So rhymes teach us how to break words into syllables. Very often I get students that are in the older grades, in grade 6 or 7, and they find it difficult to break words into syllables. That's because they probably didn't get as much practice, or maybe needed more practice with rhyming. So this is why I'm stressing this important skill. For intermediate kids, obviously you're not going to read about the bumblebee. So I would recommend that you look up Reader's Theater, and on the handout that you will receive from me, it has a website with Teachers Pay Teachers, and they range between $3 to $5, and you can go and just look through it and find something that you think will interest your child. So the great thing about Reader's Theater is you get to do different voices, do different expressions. So when you're reading, really emphasize expression, emphasize where they're going to pause in the text and where they're going to take a breath and to rehearse it. This is a time where you can really develop their reading and language skills. So it's important to choose just the right book. Like I said, you do not want to choose a book where there are more than 5 errors. You definitely want to choose a book that they can read easily. If they're pausing too much in between, like really pay attention to where they're pausing as you listen to them read. The benefits of reading to your child. Oh, sorry, that was the next thing I'm going to talk about. So daily reading at the reading level is critical. The second part is if you are reading to your child, we often think, well, is that really teaching them how to read? Yes, it does. Actually, it teaches comprehension. It teaches vocabulary. I was working with one of my students and he was really having trouble with some of the words, and it was because he didn't really have the vocabulary. And when I spoke to him further, there wasn't somebody that was reading to him on a regular basis. So it's really important to choose a book to read to your child as long as you can. So great, they've read a story and you're super happy, but then we think, okay, we want to ask them questions, but we don't want to drill them with lots and lots of questions because it no longer becomes fun. So there's two types of questions. One's inferential questions and the other is direct questions. Direct questions would be things like, you know, the caterpillar sat on 3 leaves. That would be a direct response. But the question would be, where was the caterpillar going? Inferential questions are questions that think much, much deeper into the text, a lot about, and I'm going to talk about them in just a minute. So direct questions would be something like, what was the main reason? Give me 2 examples. Quote a sentence, explain, write down 1 word. So the answers are small and short. You don't want to ask a lot of direct questions. What's even better is asking them to retell the key events in a story. So I'm not saying don't ask them any direct questions. I'm saying try to include the other forms of questions as well as the direct questions. So the second form of questions, this is really, really important, is inferential questions. So this would be like where they have to explain something, where they're comparing what's the same, what's different between 2 characters. What do you think? What does the author think? And why did that author write this story about it? And what was your impression? I did send some of you a story on, I think it was a chimp. And so I'm going to open up the mic and just see if you've had a chance to look at that story and think of some questions that are inferential questions. So I'm just going to pause right now. And if somebody could give me a note in the chat bar or let me know if you've done that. Okay, right there. Okay. All right, it says, okay, so because I'm finding it challenging, to open up and share the screen, I really don't want to go back and forth about it, but basically I'll just go over it. The book that I sent you was a really small, simple book. It was just about a story about a chimp that is going with her mother, and so I wanted you to think of an inferential question. So the question would be something like, you know, why is the chimp wanting to be with his mother? What was the author what was the message that the author was trying to send? Now, I see that some of you probably don't even know what I'm talking about. Maybe you didn't get the book that it was a link that Brock had sent to you to take a look at, but don't worry, you don't need to have read this. So I'm going to just back myself up a little bit and just say, that here I'm just trying to give you an example and a way of thinking of inferential questions. Could somebody give me an indication of whether they feel they have an understanding of what an inferential question is, either in the chat bar or by voice?
When the mother chimp came back, who was the mother chimp with?
Perfect. Okay. That would be a direct question. Okay, thank you. So is there anyone else that would like to add to that? Or the main purpose of what I'm talking about right now is inferential questions. So an inferential question for a particular story would be, why did the author write a story about this chimp and his mother? And the answer would be something like, well, you know, the relationship between a mom and their baby is very, very important. And someone writes, how did little chimp feel when his mother came back? That's exactly an inferential question. That's perfect. So thank you, Diane, for that response. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next kind of questions. And this is the who, where, and what. And this ties in with retelling the key events of a story. So kids find it very overwhelming when you ask them too many questions. And the worst thing is that if you have the kids write out their answers after reading a book, they will not want to read if they're answering question after question after question. So please, you know, do have a comprehension conversation with your child. Think of some inferential questions. Think about the who, where, what. Think of this triangle that's 3 parts. So after they read a story, you're not going to ask a whole lot of questions. You're just going to say 3 on one evening. And maybe on another evening, you might do inferential questions. Okay, so this leads to, like I said, retelling the key events in a story when you ask these. So what happened in the story? So here are some examples. You can ask who are the main characters. You know, there could be more than one character that were important. You're not going to list all of them. Where does the story take place? And then does the location of the story change in the middle of the story? So as you're working with older children, grade 6, you will find that a lot of the stories do change in setting. So to focus on the setting and think about the location of where they are. What happened in the story next, finally, and also making a connection. So if something reminds you of something that you can connect in, for example, if there was an animal that was in a forest, it reminds you of when you walked in Stanley Park, then that's called a connection. So any connection could be to a location. It could be a connection to an emotion. Well, I felt happy like that one day, or I felt that sad just like that character. And of course, the favorite part. So these are my suggestions of what teachers are looking for when we are working on comprehension, understanding the story. Okay, it's frozen. Oh, okay. So this is something that I learned from the speech and language pathologist that I was speaking to just a few weeks ago, and it brings me back to how we all go through a journey and learn constantly. And what she said was that sometimes when you ask kids what happened in a story, they will go on for a very long time about all these things, but they'll forget about the climax and what happened. So by just using the word suddenly, just that one part, suddenly, and that's all you say. You just say suddenly, then, and you will be surprised at the response. So you want to pick a really climatic part of the story. And then often they don't ever tell you what's happening in the end, and it will go on and on and on about some other parts. So I would recommend that, based on speaking to the speech and language pathologist, she said, using the term "in the end." And what I liked about what she said was that to use the same vocabulary when you ask them the question. So the keywords are suddenly and in the end. Okay. Now questions. Oops. Brock, how do I go back to the last page? I accidentally.
You should be able to
Oh,
at the bottom
I think.
there. Yeah.
Okay. So question. So, this is the how, what, and why questions. So again, it's how someone is feeling. The other thing is also thinking about the genre of the book, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, so I won't expand here. What's the message mean to you in your life? So say if the chimp really was close to his mom and they lost each other and then they come back together. The lesson that's learned is that, I always want to keep my mom close by. And when you think about it to your own life, you can say the answer might be something like, well, I know the value of being close to mom and knowing where my mom is at all times. So that's connecting it to your own life. That's called a connection. And then the other question that we often don't think about, and this is inferential, is whose perspective is the story told in? So who's the speaker in the story? Is it the young child that's telling the story, or is it a mother's voice that's telling the story? So say if it's the child's perspective, why did the writer choose to write it in the child's perspective? Maybe they want to teach other kids about the way the kids are thinking, that it was geared for kids. So that's the kind of responses you would expect. So what I did was, I've been reading this book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I really recommend that book. I listen to the audio tape because I find it a lot easier because I'm running around all day and I have a bit of a commute. And what he says, James Clear says, is when you're starting a new routine, for example, now that you're heading into the summer, you all are starting a new routine. So you don't want to start a routine. What you want to do is start a routine after an existing routine. So for example, after you brush your teeth, I am going to read a book. So you know that you are going to brush your teeth every day. That routine is already well established, and you're going to follow it with a new routine. And after I brush my teeth, I'm going to read another book. And then he said to start with a framework, a time frame, 2 minutes. So start with just reading for 2 to 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a half an hour. That's too much and it's overwhelming. You also need to choose your location. So you're not going to choose a location that is going to be somewhere where the TV is on or where there's lots of noise. You want to have a quiet location in a bedroom or a quiet area of the house where they can read. You want to make it pleasurable, he says. So, for example, you get to sit in your favorite chair. Think about that. And you also want to take the guesswork out. So, for example, if your child, if they don't know what they're going to read, then it's going to be another task that they have to do, is choosing a book. Instead, he says, put the book out on the chair or on the bed so that it takes the guesswork out. So Atomic Habits by James Clear. So Dr. Sarah Ward is the psychologist I told you about, and she has these 3 color-coded picture frames. Perhaps some of you have seen them. If you have, please let me know in the chat. Is called Get Ready, do and done. And these are really, really important. So I'm going to take you through this with me. So instead of starting with get ready, I'm actually going to do it with done. So if you were done something, so say if the goal was to be reading a book, if you were done, you'd be closing the book. So you'd have a picture of the book closed, and you would have where that book's going to go, because a lot of times when we're finished something, for example, when my daughter finished her assignment, she didn't put it in her backpack. So it never actually made it to school. So Sarah Ward says, make sure that you do the done part first. And then for the do, the green part would be sitting in a specific chair, like James Clear says, reading the book. So a picture. Now, when you draw the picture, you can do stick people. It does not have to be a fancy dancy picture. And if I can draw a picture, you definitely can. And then what is in the room and which room are we in? So all those things need to be included in the do part. And then getting ready is the hard part. So that is, what are you going to need to be reading your book in your room? Showing me that you're done is you're going to have your book, obviously. You're going to have your chair, and you're going to have the room that you're in. So those are the things. And this color coding system you can use for any type of work that you do with your child. I strongly recommend it. It's very, very effective. I use it in the classroom all the time, and I wish I had it when my kids were younger. Oops, what happened here? Okay, so we're going to do a little exercise together because I don't want to dominate. It's 7:30 right now, so we've got till 8. I want you to go away with something that you can have and be ready to use. So please get a piece of paper out with a pen and just take 2 minutes to write down something that you will definitely want to get your child to do. So think about it as reading or maybe some writing work, whatever it is. Let's do a quick brainstorm of those 3 colors, the yellow, green, and red. Okay, so I'm going to give you some time to do that now, and then we'll share it and see what you think. So when you're ready, if you could just share what you have in your yellow, your green, and your red. Okay, if people could just let me know. Oh, okay. Okay, I have Brock's and I have Diane's. Brock, do you want to just read yours?
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay, thank you.
I like that idea of incorporating it into a routine that's already going on. So before going to brush teeth, we'll choose the story and then leave the story like onto the bed, because that's where we're going to be reading. So we'll be comfortable with that space. So you can pick the story out throughout the day or before, choose it, leave it on the bed, then go brush teeth. Then you're coming back to the bed, and I'm reading remotely with my niece. So my niece then needs to have the iPad to be able to connect, and then share, open the story, and then share while I am reading, alongside and with her. And then when the story is done, the book can go back to the side of the nightstand, and the iPad has to be given back to mom so that it can charge overnight, so she doesn't have the iPad then in the bedroom at the end of story time.
Brock, that's excellent. What I really like is that you included that last part of what's going to happen with that iPad after, because that's where things get lost and it creates so much stress. So thank you for sharing that. Diane, would you be comfortable sharing yours? Oh, okay. That's okay, Diane. I'm reading yours and it looks perfect. I like the way that you've got the electronics being off and, making sure that your child knows that ahead of time. You can show them the picture, like you're actually going to go through the whole process before you actually start this new habit or routine, is going through it and being very clear on what your expectations are. And also I like the fact about going to the washroom, because sometimes that can throw your whole routine off. So you may find that you have to adjust your routine slightly, but keep doing it and write it out and you'll be really surprised. So thank you for sharing that. I hope that strategy helps you. So if you Google Dr. Sarah Ward, you can see all sorts of videos on executive functioning. I will put that in one of the handouts that I have attached to go out to the people that are at this workshop today. Okay, thank you. So this brings us almost to the end. I know we're finishing a little bit earlier. This is a quote that I really, really like, is because it says, "Why fit in when you're born to stand out?" And this resonates to me, and I can make a connection with this quote. Remember, we're making connections when we're reading with kids. Is that my kids were not the same as everybody else, and very often I stood at the edge of my bed, or edge of the kids' beds, trying to figure out how I was going to get through the day, and knowing that we don't have to be exactly the same, that being different is actually kind of good, and they're doing phenomenal things. Both my kids are lovely now. So hang in there and find your own path. And so I will open it up to any questions. I can try. I do, Brock, I have some handouts that I wanted to share, but I'm worried about putting it on the screen that I might get lost in the process. So I could just send and email them to you.
Yeah, email them to me and then I can follow up and forward them to people.
Okay, one of the handouts is about some books that are recommended for reading to your child. And I've got different age groups, and you're going to see the name Christiane written there. She was my professor in children's literature, and she started her own business in Vancouver called Christiane's Lyceum, out by Kids Book on West 8th. Anyways, she has a whole list of fantastic books on the website, and I've given you the link. And sometimes when I can't think of a new book that I want to read to my child, I go to her link and find it. So I'm encouraging you to do the same. I've put some of my favorite books on the handout, so please enjoy them. And I also talked about, one thing I didn't mention was the types of genres of the types of books you're reading to them. So it's important to tell your child, if it's a fairy tale, you know, saying this is a fairy tale, this is historical fiction, this is, so explore them, let them explore different genres, and you know, check out the websites to see which new book you'd like to try. You might be surprised. Sometimes kids get stuck on only one type of book, so you want to try to expose them to as much of a variety of genres as possible. So